Netball New Zealand is staring down a massive $6 million deficit. And to fill that hole, a wealthy billionaire couple is circling, looking to buy the RNZ premiership outright. If you read the mainstream media, this isn't framed as a crisis. The press calls the privatization of elite sport an inevitable shift. Executives argue that as an entertainment business, national bodies must surrender commercial control to private investors to get the best result. This business framing treats national sports as assets to be managed. But in New Zealand, these codes are taonga, collective treasures. If the move to sell them is truly inevitable, we need to examine what happens to that collective identity once the ownership changes. We don't have to guess if ceding authority actually delivers that best result. We just have to look at a massive, identical transfer of power made exactly 4 years ago with New Zealand's most prominent sporting brand. Today, we are auditing the paper trail. We're going to compare the media's promises of privatization against the actual documented reality of New Zealand Rugby's deal with the private equity firm Silver Lake. When private equity takes over a national taonga, the results leave a very clear financial trail. We just have to read the receipts. The loudest argument for privatization is that it injects necessary capital, guaranteeing a massive revenue lift that the sport desperately needs to survive. This chart shows the financial reality of the Silver Lake deal. While the promised revenue lift stalled, you can clearly see a massive spike right here. That is the foreign private equity firm extracting over $20 million a year in dividends. And where does that cash come from? It gets pulled directly from the local level. Provincial rugby unions are currently absorbing severe funding cuts, cascading down into deficits of $1.8 to over $3 million. Private equity didn't bring capital to save the sport. They restructured the organization to guarantee their wealth extraction, regardless of the health of the game. The second major promise is insulation. The media claims a national body can sell off its elite leagues to private owners while safely keeping control and funding for grassroots community sport. This graph tracks verified data from Sport NZ, detailing the health of community clubs over the same period. We see a severe 20% decrease in real local funding, alongside a 28% drop in volunteer numbers. Here is the mechanism driving this collapse. Community funding has been reduced to a conditional trickle. The money only flows down to local clubs after the private investors have secured their targeted financial returns. Privatization doesn't protect the grassroots level. It takes an existing community funding crisis and uses it as a bargaining chip to force through commercial takeovers. The media tends to brush off the cultural cost of these deals. Commentators frame the eternal battle for the soul of the sport as a minor, expected hurdle in the negotiation process. But the suppressed paper trail tells a different story. The New Zealand Rugby Players Association and the Māori Rugby Board put their concerns in writing, explicitly warning that a foreign equity owner could misappropriate specific Maori and Pacifica cultural values. The board received these specific warnings about cultural misappropriation and then voted to overrule them twice for cash. That decision triggered an open governance civil war that is still being fought today. The loss of a sport's cultural soul is not an accident. It is a deliberate transaction where local warnings are silenced by foreign capital. Let's connect the dots. The same billionaire household currently positioning themselves as the saviors of Netball New Zealand is simultaneously attempting to acquire control of New Zealand cricket. There is an old Māori proverb that every marae knows. If you invite the taniwa in to guard the river, one day you will wake up to find it has eaten all the fish. That is the ultimate lesson of this audit. You cannot uninvite the taniwa of private equity once it learns the taste of your cultural taonga. Under tikanga, the customary system of Māori values, a taonga held collectively is not a board's personal property. It is not something you auction off to fix a spreadsheet. We have to look past the press releases and the media spin. We need to demand the actual paper trail of these deals before the final decisions are made. The privatization of Aotearoa sports is not an inevitability. It is a series of specific choices made by specific people. And it is time we demand rangatiratanga, absolute self-determination, over receivership.